Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. Want to take a quick second, thank everybody for the great response we had to our very first video last week. We're really pleased with how that turned out, so here we go again. Today, we're going to kick it off with patio pork butt. Not the very intricate level of competition pork butt that we cook for our MBN competitions that we do week in, week out. You'll get to see that here in a few weeks in Marion, Arkansas for the Conquistador Challenge, part of the Esperanza Bonanza. That'll be our very first competition this year, and you'll get to see us do a full competition trim on not only pork butts, but a hog and some ribs. So be ready for that one. Be sure you hit that like button and mash that notification bell so you get to see when that video comes out. So for now, we're gonna crank out that pork butt and get started. Okay, so now we're inside. We're about ready to start trimming our pork butt for today. What we're working with today is a 9.5 pound Duroc pork butt. Got a lot of exterior fat on this, but the Duroc breeds have a lot of intermuscular fat, so we're gonna trim a lot of the stuff off the top just to clean it up. On the back side, you always have a fat cap. Underneath that fat cap is gonna be what we call a false cap, then a little bit more fat, and then the majority of the meat with the pork butt. So we're gonna take the fat cap off because that hard fat on top won't render. So what we'll see when we get under the fat cap will be the false cap, which is meat. Then you'll see the thin layer of fat underneath that, which will render eventually while we're cooking. So we're gonna start on the back side, and we're just trying to take mainly fat, try to stay out of the meat, and on this back side, just trying to get the hard fat off the top. As we come off with this layer of fat, you'll see that false cap underneath, really thin layer, but really tender, great eating meat when it comes off the grill. And as you'll see, that false cap runs right around that corner like that. And then there's another layer of fat underneath it that's thin. We'll leave the majority of that under the meat because, like I said, it'll render out as it's cooking and add some moisture and a little bit of flavor into that meat. Because unfortunately for guys like me, fat is flavor, so we want to leave what we can inside just to help with the moisture and the flavor of that meat. Okay, again, so this is just something we're cooking on the patio for the buddies and for ourselves. So we're not going to get overly concerned with every little last ounce of fat like we would for a competition trim. We're just taking off the big, heavier, harder pieces, and we're going to move around to the top side. Square off some of this stuff in the back corners. There's always a vein right back in here that you kind of want to clear up. Right along in this flap, along with a lot of extraneous fat inside that flap that you kind of want to just clear out with some of that silver skin, because nobody wants to bite into a big chunk of fat and silver skin. Here's that vein I was talking about. Not going to hurt anything, but it's just not palatable. Not very tasty. Alright, and then over on the top, just going to clear up some of these larger chunks. And that big section of silver skin right there. The other reason you want to get that off the top is because rub won't stick to it, so you're not going to get any flavor through it. Now, when you look at the end of this pork butt, you're going to see that muscle running right along the end there, right at the bottom. We call that the money muscle. So we're going to trim that out just a little. You'll notice in a few weeks when we do competition pork butts that is one of the main pieces that we concentrate on. I'm going to take some of that fat layer off the top of it. get it out in the open a little bit so that we can pump it up with some injection, get a little bit of rub on it, just really work on that best piece of meat on this pork butt. And there's a big vein of fat that runs kind of diagonally through the end of that money muscle. We're going to trim that out because there's a lot of fat running both directions through the end of that piece. It's just never gonna get right with all of those different veins of fat. You're just gonna end up with a real fatty bite. So that piece comes off. So we're just gonna take the rest of that fat right off the top of that money muscle, just kind of clear that up, and there you have it. All right, so now we're gonna move to injection and seasoning. Really similar injection to what you saw us mix up last week. It's Shotwell's pork injection, and then we've added some apple juice and a little bit of the Jonesy Q Pig Pal. Gives you a nice little cherry hint, some great sweetness to go in with that injection. We're going to start back here in the horn, and just kind of work in a pattern. Some of it's going to come back at you. There's nothing you can do to stop that. Just have a towel ready because it is a messy process. Stand it up on the end, get underneath that blade bone. We're going to roll it back around here to the front side. And we're going to get into that money muscle. Just going to clean up a little of that excess on the board. And then we're going to move to rub. So the first thing we're going to start with today is the Jonesy Q XTC. It's a salt, pepper, garlic mix. You may have seen us use it last week on our chicken and our fatty. This week, it's going to be the base level on our pork butt. Salt, pepper, garlic, little jalapeno flavor in there. Just want to make sure we get a good coat on all four sides. We're going to go back to the top. We're going to open up that flap and get some down in there. We'll let that set for just a second and moisten up. And once it does, we'll move in with a layer of SmokeMasters rub. Okay, so you noticed in the past few minutes that salt, pepper, garlic has started to pull some of the moisture out of that meat, started to tack up a little bit. So now that it's kind of moist across the top, we're going to come back in with a layer of our SmokeMasters rub. I just want to get a good layer across the top. Kind of pat that in just a little bit, let it pick up that moisture. And we're going to move to the back side. And kind of like we did with the XTC, we're just going to make our way all the way around the butt. Get a good layer all the way around. And just a little touch-up layer on top. And back inside that flap again. Just everywhere we can get to expose meat, just to get some more flavor in, okay? All right, now that we've got that done, transfer him over to our tray. And let that sit there for a few minutes while we go get the grill started. Okay, so we're outside at the Smoky Mountain. Going to start prepping, getting ready to bring our pork butt out here and get it on the heat. So what we've got in the bottom of the Smoky Mountain is our charcoal grate, with a little bit of apple wood in the bottom with our fire ring around it. Fixing to load up our royal oak lump charcoal. Use a little trick I got from the beeve. The only problem is the beeve will tell you, for me, that hardly ever works. We're gonna set the tumbleweeds in the top and we'll get this thing lit. All right, ready to get this thing on. Okay, so we've been on for about 5 hours now and our internal temperature is reading right about 165. Fat starts to render at about 170 to 175, so we want to get this wrapped up so that when all our fat starts to render, we catch it in the foil. So we're going to use 2 layers of foil in opposite directions. Just try to get a real tight seal so that we catch all those juices coming out of that pork butt. So we've got it on, let it smoke for an hour or so. We'll come back out, put some probes in it, track it all the way back up to 165, 170. It's where we usually like to wrap. And at that point, she'll be ready to roll on out for the next 5 or 6 hours until we get to 200 and we're ready to pull it. So we've been on right about 9.5 hours now. We've been in the wrap for about 5. So we're gonna pull this thing off. It's temping right about 200, 205 degrees. Yep, temping right at 205. So we're gonna pull it off, take it inside, and get it pulled. All right, so we're ready to start. I'm gonna get some heat gloves on because this thing's pushing 200 degrees and that's a little bit too hot for anybody to grab with bare hands. Just regular cotton glove liners underneath the regular black nitrile gloves that we use on a regular basis. Really save you fingers. All right, so let's get her unwrapped. And there it is. And there's that money muscle we talked about. You'll see that more in a couple weeks at competition because these are over. But you get nice pink smoke ring around the outside and just shred very, very easily. Best part of meat on the pork butt right there. Then we're gonna move the rest of it back over into the pan and start to shred. Take our claws, go in at an angle and just twist. Man, the flavor, the smells coming off of this thing, just amazing. We got the big pieces off, so we're gonna go in here with our hands. Make sure we're all in small chunks. And as you can see, got great smoke penetration. That purple, pink color, really, really fully tender and ready to go. So now, that's pretty much it. Your pulled pork is ready to go for regular old barbecue sandwiches, barbecued egg rolls, barbecued nachos, or what we're gonna bring to you next week, the barbecued grilled cheese. Thanks for stopping by and checking us out. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so that you hear every time we put out a new video. See you next time.